Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on conceal carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams.
And you've tuned in for yet another From Concealment podcast.
Another From Concealment podcast. And you know what? Today we're going to get riled up. I'm excited about this one. We're going to get riled up. We haven't gotten riled up in a while.
We're going to get riled up because you and I are so like-minded on certain things. Mm-hmm. Maybe not so much women in ministry, but other than that,
I'm probably more Calvinist than you, and women in ministry. And other than that, I think we're pretty aligned on most things.
I think we are, which is funny to me. I was telling Peyton that like years ago. I go, the person I have most in line with is Dan Sams. He's like, really? I'm like, dude, we're like, we think alike on a lot of these issues. But I got to share this story, man. I was starting to tell you about it before we started the podcast. So I was reading this article this morning on Facebook from one of the gun sites that I follow, or, gun news sites, which obviously is as biased as CNN, but just biased towards guns as opposed to against it. And this guy was doing a sit down with some elected official in New York, because of the Buffalo mass shooting, which why is everyone ignoring the fact that he deliberately chose a soft target? Like he wanted to shoot black people, but he did not go to the streets and to the hood and shoot black people where he knew they would have guns and shoot back. He went to the store hoping there weren't people there with guns. And I think there was a cop there with a gun, right? Because he was the guy who got killed. He shot the guy in his vest, and the guy was able to still kill him. He was an off-duty police officer, I believe. But I find it anyway. So this guy's doing the interview, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think about the coming Supreme Court decision, which may issue concealed carry permits unconstitutional, and it must be shall issue, as we call it." And the lady was just like, "Oh, I shudder to think how terrifying it would be to get on the subway and people have guns." And the guy goes, "Well, you realize people already have guns on the subway, right?" And like, she just didn't know how to respond to that. Because I've always said, when I go to Long Beach and I go to the movies and I'm carrying my concealed carry, I know I'm not the only person there with a gun. I know I'm maybe the only one there legally with a gun, but there is absolutely no way I'm the only one there with a gun.
Yeah. You might be the only one legal and properly holstered.
Yeah, right.
I have never understood why so many of these gang members that I'm like, I mean, come on, dude, like just think about a holster. Just, like at the very least, like, protect the slide and trigger, man. Come on.
Well, what's funny about that is I remember reading a story about this guy who was in a state where I don't know if he was concealed carry permitted or it was a constitutional carry state, because I remember that wasn't the point of the article. But he was a little bit older, and he was like in a Waffle House or something like that, right? I mean, just someplace. And he just went to go adjust his firearm, which he just had like tucked in his waistband, and it was a Glock. And like he pulls the trigger and shoots. And I think he might have hit himself or something, but I'm like, dude, look, man, I am a Glock boy. Like, that. Like, Glock is my gun. I love Glocks. I've trained so much on Glocks. I really don't want to switch at this point because I use Glock so much. There is no freaking way I'm sticking a Glock down my pants without a trigger guard on it. Like, everything down there is precious to me. It's precious. I don't want to lose it. I don't know what these people are thinking.
I don't know either. It's a good example of training matters, man. Like you need to get some training, because not only safety, but yeah, if you don't know how to shoot and hit anything, yeah, you need training. Yeah, having a gun is not a magic wand to winning a fight.
No,
Training is
no.
important.
And you know, it's funny. I keep thinking about something we talked about a few weeks ago. And that's if you're ever in a situation and someone already has their gun drawn, do not try and draw your gun. You will not win that fight. I don't care how quick you think you are. What does he need? Microseconds to pull the trigger? Like he's probably already staged part of the trigger and he's, you know, right there at the break. You're not going to win. So don't pull. Like the other guy's already got the upper hand. You cannot win that situation.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of that because you see all these stupid people online who are like, oh, if someone has a gun pointed at you, this is what you do real quick and you can disarm. It's like, are you out of your freaking mind?
Well, are you talking about Dust, Detroit Urban Survival Training?
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen that.
Oh my gosh. Have you not seen this guy?
I don't know.
So he runs this training program, and it is so bad that people legitimately aren't sure if he is just doing expert level trolling.
Oh,
but
no.
he's always wearing black gloves for whatever reason. He's always got gloves on. And so now it has become a thing to just make fun of this guy. So the classic one is where like he's showing what to do if somebody's got a gun pointed at him. And, you know, he does this like disarm or whatever that, you know, is ridiculous. And then they show like expectation reality. And then the reality shot, the guy does the same move, but wakes up in heaven.
Right.
And so there's what's his name? Brandon Herrera did a great job kind of like pointing out that like, okay, this guy can't be joking. I mean, it is that bad that they don't know, but he's gone through and he's like, no, I mean, this guy is charging money for classes. Like this dude is really making a name for himself here with the worst training imaginable, like just terrible. But I guess there's been some challenge because I guess there's some video of guys in the class that he would do one of those moves and they just wouldn't go along with it. Like they would just hold on to the gun and he would get really mad at them and throw them out of the class or whatever. And so there's now been a challenge. Some, you know, like mid-level black belt guy has said like, hey man, I'll fight you. Like, let's see if this works. And so there's like money on it, trying to get this guy to like apply his principles in an actual scenario.
Well, what's funny to me is there's a guy by the name of Victor Marks, and he's a Christian. He's really big in the Calvary Chapel churches, and like he's a public speaker, and he's got, you know, he's all over Instagram and all this other. And I think he was big in martial arts. He might have fought UFC back in the day. I honestly don't remember exactly. Because I remember meeting him one time and thinking he was a total dick. I was just like, all right, whatever, dude. And but he's got that move, right? He's done this, like there's all these videos of him on stage in front of all these cops. Hey, let me show you how you disarm. Like he does it real quick, and everyone's like, "Whoa, wow, that was so quick!" And I'm like, "Dude, pull the trigger. Pull, you're dead.
Yeah.
Boom, you're dead."
Yeah.
Like, are you really going to risk someone who's got a gun pointed at your head or chest, and all they got to do is just, you know, I mean, I can't even describe how short a space it is. They got to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
You're dead.
Well, and here's the other thing. This is covered in what is it? When violence is the answer. I think it's When Violence is the Answer. And he talks about asocial violence versus social violence. He's like, if somebody's holding a gun to you, chances are they're asking for money. They want your wallet. There's something like that. And that's actually called social violence. It's still an exchange. Like they want something from you, and your chances are generally still better to just give them what they want, right? Sure. You know, you can cancel the credit cards in your wallet. They're not going to take that much cash. It's going to be a hassle, but it's not worth risking your life over. And so even this guy, I mean, he's really trained, and he's like, man, most of the time, just hand it over. Like, it's not worth the risk of whatever. But then there's asocial violence, which is they just want to hurt people. Well, the guy who's committing asocial violence is like, you know, the shooter in Buffalo. Like, there's not any reasoning that's going on. But the reality is they're not holding you at gunpoint. They're just shooting you, right? So if you're in a situation where somebody's holding you at gunpoint, you're probably actually in a negotiation scenario, and you handle that differently. Generally, obviously, there are certain circumstances where something else is going on, whatever. But they're like kind of in general, like they probably just want your wallet. Give me your wallet. Like, and anyway, now
And
he
that's
talks
my
about
philosophy
how,
too, by the way.
yeah,
Because like we've talked about,
well,
I'm not killing someone over my wallet. I'm not killing someone over my car. I'm not killing someone over stuff.
yeah.
I don't
would
care
say,
about that.
I would say generally, I wouldn't kill over stuff unless it was something that was required for my livelihood, right? Like if we're in a situation where they're like, you know, we're hungry and like we're in a food crisis and somebody's stealing my chickens, right? Like in a crisis, I mean, that's the way that I feed my family in that scenario. There are certain things where it's like, if you're going to take away my ability to live, we've got a different thing, but even that's kind of in a judgment call, but same idea. I'm like, in general, I'm like, I don't want to kill
and I
somebody.
think that would also be in a different time. Like I'm thinking,
yes, yeah,
I'm not thinking about we're in the apocalypse. We're in the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Hey, all bets are off.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking regular life as we've got it today, pre-Russia nuking the Ukraine and therefore starting World War III. You know, I'm not killing over stuff.
Yeah. Which, speaking of apocalypse, this should bring us to our next subject.
That's true. It should.
Yeah. So I'm sure the Freedom Nation, actually, you know what? I don't want to say that the Freedom Nation is automatically hearing about this. We're being distracted by a lot right now. We're being distracted by, let's see, Johnny Depp trial that has nothing to do with anything, right? There's, what else are we being distracted by? Crisis over baby formula, which is a serious thing.
Well, how about
economics,
monkeypox?
Monkeypox, yes.
Where really the K is silent. It's just moneypox.
Mm-hmm. Oh, monkeypox! It's that one. That one is like chief level at this point. That's like the World Health Organization just trolling us. They're just like, "What's the craziest stuff we can get away with?" I know, monkeypox. Like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's insanity. But speaking of World Health Organization, while we're being,
and they've lost all credibility, by the way. So like if it was a legitimate thing, it wouldn't matter. Like no one would believe them. They're the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah. Well, think about all of the shadiness they're involved in. And just the relationship even with the World Economic Forum, which if you're following that, man, World Economic Forum is just about the most wicked thing I can think of, rivaled closely with the World Health Organization. But they're talking about this treaty that, Pete, you might have even looked into it in more detail, but essentially bringing all of these countries underneath a treaty and to essentially discuss how they're going to handle quote unquote global pandemics. And the rulings that they put in place would essentially override, in their view, constitutions of the countries involved. So,
well, what happened was there was a provision in there that said, that the WHO could come up with the rules, whatever, but then the local state, meaning the local government, they had to approve it. Biden had that taken out. It was literally Biden who said, you know what? No one gets to, like, whatever WHO says, that's what goes. So that's why now the treaty would override, in theory, local constitutions. The reason why I say in theory is I don't give them permission.
Yeah.
I don't give them permission to override my constitution, my constitutional rights. So I don't really care what they think.
Man, I just think about how something like that happens. Like, the president of the United States doesn't have the right to make that kind of a call.
No.
Right? Like, he's not a dictator. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever he's signed, whatever he's pushed, whatever he ends up signing is void. Like, he just doesn't have the right to do that. So, which is what I would say about a lot of the quote unquote laws we have in place that are unconstitutional. I'm like, these Christians that get worried about Romans 13, I'm like, well, we have to obey. And I'm like, no, that's a violation of the Constitution. So it's null, like worthless. It's, it's, don't even bother with it. And we're going to have to start thinking more seriously about how to respond to this kind of stuff, because it's getting so far out there, dude. So far out there.
Yeah, it's It's interesting times, man, for sure. Why did you say before we started the podcast that Bill Gates would be the emperor of the world with this? What's his role with WHO? I don't even know what it is.
It's funny. He has had like this advocacy role. Hold on, because there really did have something to do with it. Hold on. I'm going to have to look it up really quick because I don't want to do it justice. Yeah, let's see. I might not be able to find it because he's just a key influencer in it. But there was something specific. It had to do with vaccine initiatives. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to look it up and give it good justice here. Like I'm looking at the article, but he's got some agreement with them. Like part of it is that like he's a key influencer with them, and he's got their ear, but he's got some thing that they're talking about him doing with this, and I just can't do it justice here without messing up, and I don't want to say the wrong thing about it. But yeah, so I would advise look up a little bit about what he's got going on with the World Health Organization, just in general. Put aside everything else. They're doing what he wants them to do, and he's continually influencing it. But this agreement had something with him, and I don't remember what it was.
I wonder if it bothers him that he's not the richest man in the world anymore. Like, I wonder how much ego at that level comes into play where you're like, no, I want to be the richest man in the world. I'm just curious, actually, just because I don't know. I don't know how much that really comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me ask you something. I know this has nothing to do with guns. First of all, what do you think is going to happen? And what are your thoughts on student loan forgiveness?
I think it's all a sham and a ploy. They got votes. Now they got the votes they needed, although I don't even think they need votes anymore. I don't know that anything's going to happen with it. I don't think they're actually going to do what they promised to do. You don't think they're going to even forgive any student loan? Maybe some. They're probably going to do some so that they can later on say, look, yeah, we did what we said, even though they didn't actually do what they said. We'll see. But either way, man, I mean, if they do it, it's not going to be what people actually want, right? Like think about like the stimulus checks. Like this, what it ended up being like $1,500 a person, but the corporation's got like $40K a person, right? It's not going to be whatever it is. It's not going to be what they've really promised. It's going to be this little shadow of it. And I think if they don't do it, that's one thing. But if they do it, it's also going to be awful because it's going to be our money.
Well, yeah. I mean, it literally is just transferring the debt from one person to another. You can't. Yeah. Like, people have to realize the government literally has zero money that they did not first take from someone else. Yeah. They have no money. They literally had to take it from someone else.
I would actually say it's worse than that, because right now what they're essentially doing is leveraging debt against us and our children and our grandchildren. So it's not even taking it from us. It's enslaving us to pay it in the future. Sure. It's like credit card fraud. It's like somebody gets your information and blows a whole bunch of money on credit cards. And then you find out after the fact, when you get your credit score, that you're like, whoa, what? There's all these credit cards in my name. Well, you're on the hook to pay them, even though you didn't have anything to do with it. That's essentially what the Federal Reserve is.
Yeah.
Man, it gets me mad. Yeah.
Here's the thing that I was thinking about with this particular topic is the reason why so many people are enslaved to student loans. One, whenever the government gets involved in something, it's going to get screwed up, right? So, I mean, we've seen massive increase in higher education because the government said, hey, we want to make it easier for people to go to college. So we're going to come up with all these loan programs, and we're going to subsidize the interest, and we're going to guarantee. But I think one of the essential elements that have made all these companies that give out student loans just go rampant with it, you're not allowed to discharge student loan debt in bankruptcy. You can never get rid of it, and they know it. It's like Elon Musk, he's famous for saying, hey, they won't give an 18-year-old $10,000 to start a business, but they'll give him $100,000 to go to college. There's obviously something wrong. It's because they know the $10,000, That kid could bankruptcy it off his record, everything, never have to pay it back. Can't do that with student loans. You want to fix student loans right now today and tighten everything up and slow down the money supply into there, therefore slowing down the increase in college education expense. Make it so student loans can be discharged in bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm. The irony is that the one way in which debt can be forgiven, the government actually blocked that with student loans
right
only. And so that's, well, and then I go way more tinfoil hat on this. I'm with you on all of it, but I think about the way in which people make decisions when they have long-term debt, right? Like I think of like, we have student loans, mine are paid off and my wife's we're on our way. But I think about what happened, especially when we were young in our marriage. The student loan payment was actually a big chunk of our monthly payments, right? So that meant we weren't taking certain risks. We weren't having children when we probably should have. I'll tell you right now, we should have had kids 3-4 years earlier than we did.
That's funny. I would probably tell you that I should have never had kids. Oh, wait, sorry. Did I say that out loud? I'm just kidding.
No. I'm a big proponent of like, we need to have a bunch of kids because the state is trying to control so much, and man, we need to outbreed them. The state is happy to have single moms having kids that they can take away from them. We need to be fruitful and multiply. It's good for the kingdom, good for the culture.
Yes, but notice it's be fruitful and multiply. It's not be fruitful by multiplying. Like we got to understand what exactly was the verse saying, because so many Mormons use that. They go, well, it says be fruitful and multiply. I go, be fruitful, not by multiplying. Those are two different things. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
You're supposed to do both.
You're supposed to do both, but that doesn't mean that multiplying is being fruitful.
Yeah. You don't get to be like, I have 70 kids. Yeah. I can't pay for them, but have 5. Yeah. Right. Yeah. What's always interesting to me to see, this is a cool thing in Protestant homeschool communities where we have a family in our church with like 7 kids, and dude, they hustle. They make good money. They provide for those kids. The men, great family. And it's an interesting thing what happens. Like you're like, I pay for these kids. I'm going to work hard. It's cool. So yeah, man. So some wild stuff there. The whole World Health thing, I would just encourage Freedom Nation, pay attention to what's going on. It is being ignored and it needs some attention. And I would say do the same thing with the World Economic Forum. If you don't know who Klaus Schwab is, you need to know who he is, and you need to figure out who is working with him. It sounds like conspiracy talk, but the reality is several people involved in Canadian and US government are involved in the World Economic Forum and making decisions according to WEF policy, not in accordance with any constitutions of any states or the United States. And man, you can go to their website, look up the World Economic Forum and what they actually have planned, and then see who's on their board. And then go and look up at what positions do those people serve in US and state governments and Canadian governments. And it will make you want to go do things that we can't talk about on the show.
That's just too funny to me, man.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? This leads me to another topic. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, go for it. Go for it.
So
this is how we go down the rabbit trail. This is how it is.
So let's just get tinfoil hat on this for a little bit. We all know about all of the grooming stuff that's been talked about. Like you have Disney upset at Ron DeSantis for what he put in place was essentially an anti-grooming law, right? Like it's a pretty simple, you can't tell kids about all of this weird, wacky transgender stuff. And it was only cutting it off at 2nd grade, right? So it doesn't actually protect long term, right? Third grade. So you have that thing going on. Then we have just what's happening in these school books. Consistent theme. Salt Lake City was a new one when the Mormons even Salt Lake City School Board has pornography in one of their children's books, part of the education. We already know about what was happening in Loudoun County, Virginia. But people think that like these are little isolated incidents. This is widespread, and continually in school board meetings, what we have is parents standing up saying, this was the assignment my child was given. There was a person got up and said, like, my child was given an assignment to study their dad's erection. And I'm like, that's bonkers on top. Like, this is just sexual abuse. Like, and so what's happening though, as parents are getting up and saying, this is what my child was required to read in class, in front of the class publicly. And they start to read it and they cut off her mic and they say, you're not allowed to read it because it's obscene content. She's like, exactly. This shouldn't be in our schools. But then she can't bring the evidence because it's obscene. And so it's this weird legal protection that it's like, you can't bring it up in a school board meeting because it's obscene. So it keeps on going because you can't bring it up. And we've talked about this already on previous episodes, but people, it's bad. So then, I don't know if you guys follow, it's Exodus Cry, which is an advocacy group that fights human trafficking. And they're, as far as I know, they're all Christians involved in it, very similar to Operation Underground Railroad or the Nazarene Fund and some of that kind of stuff. So they posted something a couple of weeks ago, this girl who was trafficked from an NBA game. And this was not some runaway kid who's already at risk and all that. And all those things are tragic and awful already. When parents go to a basketball game with their daughter, she says, I have to go to the bathroom. She goes to the bathroom.
Is it the Mavericks?
Simple as that. Yeah. She doesn't come back when they thought she should. They start looking around, can't find her, go to the police, and the police kind of give her some bull crap about like, well, this is really, you need to go to your local police. And it was all like smoke and mirrors. And so the parents end up, I don't know if they hired a private investigator or how it went about going, but they actually engaged on their own and found her on a solicitation site. And so they managed to track her down herself. Police did not do jack. Eventually, arrested the traffickers, but the parents did all of the work, like every bit of the work to find this child. And I'm like, this is not some like random, as terrible as it is, usually we hear about trafficking situations being, the child is in crisis already.
Right.
Man, this is a regular family. Went to a regular public place that should be considered reasonably safe. Now, I don't consider those kind of things safe, but it should put us on high alert now that what's happening, the level of deviance that we're facing now, and the lackadaisical nature of law enforcement in dealing with these particular issues, we're out of control, man. And so if there's ever a time that you need to be carrying a gun everywhere you go, it's now. Just freaky stuff going on, man. So thought that would be worth pointing out. I'm thinking like, here we have cops don't in general protect our rights. When there is something that goes wrong, every legal situation I've been into, I had to do all the work. And even now I'm like, I'm waiting on prosecutors to deal with a situation related to something else. And I'm like, I did all the work for you. And you didn't even give me a call to check in about it. Like, you use the information, that's great. But this whole thing where people are like, oh, but the government's going to protect this, or the police are going to protect this. No one is coming. It is up to you and your family and your friends and your church to protect. Because it ain't going to happen any other way. So,
hey, well, one thing we got to discuss then, and I know this is totally not the right forum for it, but hey, that's the rabbit trail we go down.
Let's do it.
SBC. Tell me, what do you think about the report that just came out?
I haven't gotten to read it yet. I heard about it. You're talking about the Southern Baptist Convention report, and I think Al Mohler wrote about it. About all the
sexual people that they protected. Basically, in fact, a buddy of mine put on Facebook, now we know what it's like to feel like a Catholic. And I was like, yeah, you ain't too far off from that, because what you see is the SBC was protecting sexual abusers. Some of them, like some of the stuff, I was like, that's wrong by the world's standards. That's bad. That's not even like, oh, that's wrong for Christian. No, that even the world would sit there and go, no, that's evil. Yeah. That's rape. That's sexual assault. dude, freaking shoot that guy in the head and be done with it.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'd be happy to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the SBC, different people at the SBC really protected a lot of people who should have been strung up.
Yep.
Should have been strung up, 100%.
Well, I've been saying for a long time that the SBC sucks. And you're
not an SBC fan.
No, I'm not really. Well, anytime we have these situations where power grabs happen that are similar to what's happening in federal government. So like, I know some people really like J.D. Greer, but like he used the pandemic to essentially stay in power without an election, right? And so I'm like, yeah, you can blame pandemic, whatever. You guys could have handled this a different way. What you did is you kept power. When you constitutionally, by the Southern Baptist bylaws, you weren't allowed to have it. And so, not that this is his fault, but like we've got so much crap like that goes on the SBC. If you even watch how they push through the whole critical theory agenda, when they took a bill that was supposed to be a motion to essentially condemn critical theory, and then they completely gutted it, changed it, and then waited until they pushed it back to the very last vote, so there was no time for discussion on it. So you had half the people saying like, "Well, yeah, I remember I sponsored that. Let's support that." And then other guys are like, "Wait a minute, it's saying the exact opposite right now." And so some people didn't know, and then the people that try to speak out against it, they're like, "Well, you're racist." And it's like, you don't even know what's in this. And so shady, wicked stuff has been going on in there for a while, and they suck. And so even on these things that I would consider less crisis level issues, we're seeing their behavior, right? And it's power grab behavior. It's political behavior. It's not, this is what the word of God says, so let's do this behavior. And so it does not surprise me. And I would say we have two things. When we know there was some of this stuff that was coming out already. Like we knew about this, 3 years ago, some of this stuff was coming out.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And I would say, yeah, there was a little bit of a movement, like we got to do this different. We got to do that different. And I know that there's this whole, and this is what an SBC guy will tell you every time. They'll be like, well, I hang my hat on the autonomy of the local church. And I'm like, bullshit. Because you are happy to draw the line on all these stupid little picky issues so that you can, say, well, this is what it's like to be Southern Baptist. But this is not an autonomy of the local church thing. How they handle pedophiles is not an autonomy of the local church thing. This is what the law of God says. And so I see this on so many issues, and I know we'll disagree on this one, but even on the women pastor thing, they'll hang their hat on that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but we at least need to discuss this biblically. And I'll have this guy who's like, well, this is what our statement of faith says, and this guy's doing the opposite. And I'm like, okay, so that's outside the boundary though of autonomy of the local church, but you won't do anything about it because you don't want to, and you'll play that card. Well, they played that card on the sexual abuse thing, and now it's blowing up in their faith. And I just don't have any compassion for them. I'm like, you're getting what's coming to you. And I'm thinking about the guys who would draw the line on this stuff. You pushed them out of the country, man. I think Vodi Bakum is the kind of guy who's dealt with some of this stuff, and you guys hate him. So the guys who actually try to say something, you run them out of town. And that's the thing. And then they're like, well, we never thought this would happen. And I'm like, man, Russell Moore sucks too. I'm sorry. But everybody's remember Russell Moore was head of the ethics committee for the SBC, right? You remember this?
I'm not an SBC guy, so I don't know their whole stuff. So
this is interesting. The SBC had this committee for religious liberty and ethics. And it's actually a great idea. I'm like, what a cool thing. Think about the largest Protestant denomination then essentially has this group that it's big ethical thing coming up, and whatever it has to do with abortion or whatever. It's these are the experts you can call. Cool, right? And Russell Moore was head of that. Well, then all of this sexual abuse stuff is going on, and he's the head of that body. If there's anybody to blow the whistle, this is the guy. And everybody listens to him. He has the ear of CNN. He has the ear of Fox. He has he can talk to anybody. He can blow any whistle he wants. He quits his job there and then sends out this leaked, open letter about all of this sexual abuse that wasn't being dealt with, blah, 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 blah. And he's mad about it. And I'm like, sucker, it was your job. The buck stops with you. you're complaining about this stuff. You wouldn't blow the whistle. You left the job so you could get your cushy job somewhere else. And then you write that letter like a freaking coward. Like, you suck, Russell Moore. And like, I would say right there, he is part of the reason why crap like this goes on. And he is the darling of the leftists and the progressives. And they're like, oh, he's so great. And he's so soft and he's so nuanced. I'm like, fuck that guy. Sorry. But like seriously, like, it's the same thing where it's like, if you are not going to be man enough to put out the word of God and say, this is what the word of God says on this issue. And if you're not going to do it on a doctrinal issue, you are sure as hell, and I mean that literally, sure as hell, not going to do it on one of these other issues that makes you look even worse. And so anyway, my hope is that some of the reformers and the Southern Baptists can come along, make some changes. But I'm one of those, I'm like, why don't you guys just knock the dust off your feet? Why would you want to try? I'm like, I can do a whole lot more for the kingdom outside of an organization like that. Anyway, sorry, done with my rant.
I love how this gun podcast has nothing to do with guns half the time.
I know. And you know what? Hey, but you know what? I mean, it is the cure for pedophilia is exactly what we talk about. I mean, you know, I'm like,
no, there were some things that came out,
for tyranny.
I was reading the article today on Christianity Today because someone shared it on Facebook, and yeah, some of the stuff that came out, it was pedophilia. I mean, this poor 14-year-old girl by I think it was her pastor, and another one 16-year-old maybe by the youth pastor, and churches protected them and didn't believe the girls and would, I mean, I get that, right? Like, I understand that sometimes people can lie. But let me tell you, when it comes to this topic, especially with kids, you better take it seriously and fully investigate it, and don't just go, no, I know that guy. He's a good, solid guy. Yeah. Look,
that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. The reason why these guys in the Catholic Church and the Christian Church get away with it is because they don't come across as the creep. Like the teacher, I was just reading an article this week, some 26-year-old teacher got turned in by her husband because he found out she was carrying on a sexual relationship with her 17-year-old female student. Oh. It's like the predators do not come across as predators. If they did, you would never go near them.
Yeah.
And that's why we see pedophiles go to schools and churches. Like they absolutely target those.
And the TSA.
Well,
that's real. That's actually real. Yeah.
Oh no! Let's just go after the government too, and they go after the post office. I mean, they're getting it. No, I'm just.
But seriously, they sign up to be in the TSA because they get to feel up kids. Like that's part of that's why they go to the TSA. TSA seriously has a high rate. Wow. That's a whole other thing. Yeah, talk to people in Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they'll say like they're like. I mean, that unfortunately attracts people too, and good people want to do that too. But they'll tell you that like if somebody wants to do this and they work for the TSA, we're on high alert at that point.
Wow, are you serious?
I mean, it was a dude I was talking to because my family did Big Brothers years ago, and in the interview process, they were actually sharing that like, yeah, this guy works for the TSA in Cleveland, ended up being whatever, and so we're like, oh, we're more cautious now.
Yeah. What's funny is I don't know why I am so sensitive to that with my kids, but like, we don't let our kids pretty much go anywhere without us.
We don't either.
Like I'm on an absurd high alert level when it comes to that. I don't know why, because I wasn't a victim of it growing up. I don't think I know of anyone who was a victim of it growing up, but I'm just on massive high alert. And I remember probably because the Church Planter podcast, and that was a podcast that I did with a guy by the name of Peyton Jones, who Dan knows. Mm-hmm. And we did it for years, like 9 years or something like that, over 400.
It was a good podcast, episodes. By the way.
Yeah. We just ended it, I think last summer, we finally ended it. But that was something that was like really sensitive to Peyton. And he was like, look, we have strict rules when it comes to our kids. Like There always has to be two adults in the rooms, and they cannot be related. They cannot be by marriage or by blood. And part of that, and I didn't know this, but he's like, look, the thing is, let's say the husband is a pedophile. They're usually, basically the spouse will be okay with it in a lot of situations. That's why we don't let husband and wife. Yeah. And I remember we were visiting this one church, and I remember there was one person, one adult in the room. And I was like, dude, I do not like this. I do not want to leave my kids here because I don't know this dude. I'm a visitor, right? Like, I have no idea who this person is. And you want me to leave my kids here with this one old dude? Because I'm thinking, it's the dirty old grandpa who doesn't look dirty, right? They never do. They never look that way. But I mean, it's just one of those things that I'm just on massive high alert about all the time.
I don't think that's high alert. I think that's just being smart. We're in a time, I don't know if you've seen the documentary Raised on Porn. Good documentary. Disturbing, but a good documentary. And just the access of pornography at such a young age. And so the level of deviancy is so up. And generally, violent porn and child-related porn. I mean, it's just skyrocketing.
Wow.
And so what we have now is a whole, when you think of some of the stats are saying that 8 out of 10 men are addicted, not just involved in, but addicted to pornography. And we just know that we know the nature of it. You can look up the stats. Like Pornhub has stats on which by the way, the stuff that they allow, those guys need to have a millstone thrown around their neck. But you have all of that. And then we know that there's predators and that they're younger and that they're doing terrible stuff. And so one of the things we do is our church, we don't even have a separate children's program. There's an educational reason for that and a spiritual reason for that. We're not totally against it, but we have everybody together. So I'm like,
your kid's also, not even off on a house church with 8 people, right? So I mean,
we have 40, but yeah,
that come to each house.
Not each house, but ours is 40, sometimes 50 people.
Okay,
that's
pretty big for a house church.
It is, yeah. Well, and currently we're not in a house at the moment because we couldn't fit everybody in, but we've actually gotten pretty close. We've done 35 in a house anyway. But that's one of the things we do. And my wife and I, same thing. We don't do sleepovers. Just terrible things can happen in sleepovers. And so when people ask us, we're like, we just don't do sleepovers. Even if I trust the family, I can trust everybody. In fact, I'm thinking of people, I'm like, I trust them. I wouldn't really worry, but I would rather go one step further. That's another reason why I'm I avoid public school. The things I know about kids getting into deviant pornography because they were riding a bus with a kid who had an iPhone, right? Just riding a bus, kids get exposed to the most heinous pornography at critical stages. Yeah, I could go on for a long time, but I don't think you're being hyper vigilant, dude. I think you're being smart. So yeah, we'll see what happens with the SBC, man. But I know people in the SBC. I know you do too. But I knew a guy who was a major player regionally here, who essentially came to me and said that it wasn't over that specific issue, but it was other related issues that he's I got to get out. He's I'm saying this is wrong. Can't believe you guys are pushing this guy through who has that history. And they're well, we're going to do this. And so he's I was powerless. And he's I'm supposed to be in charge of this role. Yeah, I got to be careful so I don't out who the guy is. But he's just nothing I can do. So I'm moving out. He's I wouldn't trust most of these pastors that they're bringing on right now. Yeah, it's not a good thing, dude. So yeah.
Crazy times.
Yeah, it's crazy times. So I don't know. We'll so that's why we say keep your rifle by your side, boys. That was a good time to be concealed carrying everywhere at all times. Yeah, you never know when you're gonna, need to use marksmanship.
To protect yourself and your loved ones.
Protect yourself and your loved ones. Yeah. And it's cheaper than a helicopter. Yeah.
Cheaper than a helicopter?
Well, because that's how you kill commies, man.
Well, I was going to say, throw commies out of a helicopter? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. That's right. I mean, that's cheaper than a helicopter, man. This is how I'm honey, we need more guns. We need more ammo. It's either that or a helicopter,
Dude, man, I'm looking forward to moving. I mean, right now we're in escrow, so hopefully this home sells. I mean, it could still fall out. You never know.
Oh, so you got one. You got a buyer.
We got a buyer.
Praise the Lord, man.
I know, right? And I'm just keep praying. Hey, God, let this thing keep going through. But I the difference between California and Texas, as far as churches are concerned, is dramatic. In the sense that in California, you just don't go to church if you don't want to go to church. Like it's socially acceptable to not go to church. Mm-hmm. In the Bible Belt, it's not so much socially acceptable to not go to church. So everyone goes to church, but that doesn't mean everyone's a Christian. And unfortunately, it doesn't mean those churches are really what I would consider a true church. And so I think about that. And I'm like, all right, well, when we get there, we're going to see what's what. But anyway, we might be, hopefully we'll join a church plant. I love church plants, man. I love
church plants are fun. Yeah. Find you a good, Reformed Baptist house church network. That's what you need.
I wonder if they got them. I have no idea.
Yeah. It's hard to find house, in all seriousness. You can imagine house church groups are not great at it, at putting it on the internet where they're at. Even us, it's tricky. We use,
you don't necessarily want to go, hey, come to my house. I mean,
exactly. Well, like our church, there's a form on our website you fill out to be able to visit. And we normally have you come to our once a month public meeting first. So we meet you so that we're not just, giving the website or giving the address out all over the place.
Right.
Yeah, man, I hope you find something good. I would actually recommend G3 Network has a good listing of pretty biblical churches. And worth checking that network out. And they might be more reformed than you are, Pete, but you're going to come across good, Bible teaching, faithful churches. And then I don't know, Peyton knows somebody around there. He'll give you one that's not as good as the ones I would recommend, but still probably people that'll teach the gospel. Probably.
I love it.
Love it. I love Peyton, man. I need to say hi to him. I haven't said hi to him in a while.
I know. I told him, I go, hey, once we're done with the podcast, our friendship's over. Right? He's like, no. I'm like, dude, we have a once a week friendship. We do a podcast together. When we're done, I'm just saying, we probably won't talk that much.
Dude, if you and I didn't have this podcast, we wouldn't get the chance to talk.
Of course not.
Yeah. It's we live in different parts of the world doing different things. I would consider you a friend, but I wouldn't be able to see you that much. We wouldn't be close. Yeah. And I would be like, Pete's probably over there believing some weird egalitarian crap.
I love it. Well, hey, why don't you give Lake Erie their plug, man?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Last week I was at the groundbreaking for Lake Erie Arms. Really excited. All that's happening for the new facility. You guys need to check out learms.net. Follow what's going on. Sign up for some training because huge, exciting things are going on. And I'll also give a quick plug to bravodef.com. Some exciting things going on there, also related to training, a little bit different type of training. But check out learms.net, bravodef.com. Lots of good things happening. We'll see you.
All right, guys. We'll be back next week. We'll talk to you all then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the From Concealment Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.